All right, we are back for another episode of the House Podcast. Again, if you don't know me by now, you probably should, but Josh Handler, one of the founders of the Handler Zimmerman team over at Exit Realty. And what do I got to say about this market? Everybody's saying the same thing. It's absolutely insane. You can't find a house. You can't get an offer accepted. And you put in 17 offers and you're still out there looking. But we're going to talk about it today, what you got to do to possibly get your offer accepted in this market and try to give you a little bit of advantage over the rest. So today, I figured I'd bring back the man who started the podcast in our old setup. We kind of upgraded a little bit, but Sal Rizzolo from Cardinal Financial is in the house.
Thank you for having me, sir.
Don't sound too thrilled, man.
I'm so excited.
But, all right, so obviously the market's crazy. You're on the mortgage end. You see it all the time. People are asking you, what are we doing? I can't get an offer accepted. Why? We have a client right now actually together. They're putting down 20%. They're
a little bit of an anomaly because you should have had an accepted offer for them by now.
I mean, we've put in 4 offers, $50, $60, and $80,000 over asking.
With appraisal waivers or certain types of waivers.
Modified.
Right.
With 20% down, nothing to sell, and they just can't get accepted offer.
Those are statistical anomalies, but you've had much better luck with way stricter offers.
Which is crazy because I have offers that are nowhere near those terms.
I know.
And we're getting accepted offers, but we can't get an accepted offer for these guys, and it's actually brutal because every time they email me or they text me, hey, any update on our offer? And I literally have to tell them, yeah, we didn't get accepted either on this one. And they're like, all right, on to the next one. But
strong backup, though.
Yeah,
always a strong
we're always
backup.
a backup. Yeah, we're going to keep your offer. You're our number one backup. Perfect. That's exactly what my clients want to hear if we can't get accepted.
And they're like, the person who won the house actually was $100,000 over ask, and they bought it today. Cash.
Yeah. It's literally absolutely insane. The last one actually said, okay, you're our backup offer, but you just missed out by a little bit, and they waived the appraisal. So that will lead into our segment because that's literally what she told me. So I guess for the people that don't know, let's go to you and say, what is an appraisal in general? Like what happens when they're taking a mortgage and they need an appraisal?
Sure. So I think that I think that there's 2 different parts of having your offer considered. An appraisal is obviously a huge part of it, right? There's the fundamentals of your offer, and that's the things that you can't change. That's your credit score, your down payment, the money that you have, and the loan program that you're taking out, whether or not you have a house to sell. And then there's what we do on the back end, whether it's how we present the offers, how we reach out to the listing agents, how we explain to them what needs to be done, and how we explain to our clients what it means for them to waive an appraisal or waive an inspection, and whether they even can or can't do it. Right. The same way that you explain to your listing agents whether a buyer has the ability to waive an appraisal or an inspection.
Right.
So an appraisal is probably in this market, it's one of the most important things to understand and to know whether or not it's necessary or if it can be waived and what that means for the client.
So for the standard, if I'm getting a mortgage, what is an appraisal? How does it work for the people that are first-time home buyers that have no idea about the process?
Okay. So an appraisal is going to determine the value of the home that you're purchasing based on, and this is important, based on recent sales, comparable sales that have sold in the area with the same school district and the same town zip code for the most part. And then the appraisers want to go even further as to the same bedroom and bathroom count or the same square footage, same type of yard, same type of quality of the home. So the problem with that in a market like this, when you think about it logically, is an appraiser has to use anywhere between 3 and 6 comparable sales that all sold within the last 7 months, that all sold within a mile. If you don't have that many sales, because a lot of times you don't, because the inventory is low,
right?
Now they might go even further back. They might push back 8 months or a year. But what's the problem with comparing your home to houses that sold a year ago? The prices were significantly lower. The house that you might be willing to pay $500,000 for today might have sold next door to you 8 months ago for $460,000.
Right.
So now the appraiser is using that house and comping your house out as if that's what it's worth. But the market and the people and the inventory and the scarcity and the interest rates are pushing the demand and pushing the willingness of people to pay additional money for these homes.
So do you think that with the whole COVID and everybody's bidding $50, $60, $80, $100,000 over asking price, that once a lot of these houses that were under contract during COVID start closing, these will set the new comps and there'll be less houses that come back under value?
Yeah, so I mean, we're already in a much better place than we were when COVID first hit, because you were doing this, and the appraisals were a much bigger concern back then because the inventory, no one was leaving their house, no one was listing their house. All the houses came off the market, deals fell apart, people lost their jobs. So the houses, we spiked a good 20, 30,000 on average above value of where we were on Long Island, and the appraisers weren't coming in for us.
Right.
A lot of appraisers were scared that there was going to be a crash, or scared that things weren't going to follow through. So we were seeing conservative appraisals, or they weren't using homes that hadn't closed yet, or hadn't they were being very conservative.
Right, because they're there to really protect the bank.
Right. They work for the bank and they don't work for you. So the way that I try to explain to people when we go over an appraisal and what it means is, in a normal market or in a buyer's market, an appraisal can protect you from paying more than what a house is worth.
Right.
In this market, you basically need to stand in front of your realtor and raise your right hand and say, I am willing to pay more than what a house is worth.
Yeah.
Because on paper, or as far as an appraiser is concerned, if you're going to tell me that you're not willing to pay more than what someone else paid 7 months ago, then you're in the wrong market.
Right.
Because houses are clearly worth more than that.
Yeah.
So in a market where we would use an appraisal to kind of protect us from overpaying, now it's preventing us from overpaying, and we're willing to overpay.
Right.
So if somebody said, all right, this house is $500,000, and then every other house in this neighborhood is $500,000, you take your pick. You're going to buy one of those houses and you're going to get it for $500,000. But if there's only one of those houses and there's 100 people that want to buy it, now what are you willing to pay for that house? Because if it's 500, that house is not yours anymore.
Yeah.
Someone's going to pay 505. Someone's going to pay 510. Someone's going to sweeten the pot and offer a 50% down payment, and put it down on contract just because they're fed up, they're sick and tired, they want the house.
Yeah.
So let's go over an appraisal waiver.
Yeah. So a lot of times people are hearing now on the listing side, okay, this person's putting down 20%, this person's putting 10%, but now they're sweetening their offer. It's not just about your down payment anymore. It's not just about your offer price. Now it's all the little terms of the whole deal. So people are starting to waive mortgage contingencies. They're starting to waive appraisal waivers, which are probably the top two things that people are now doing. But the appraisal waiver, I guess, let's start for what is waiving the appraisal? We'll start with that, and then we'll break it down depending on which way we want to go.
So waiving anything in a contract as a buyer just means that you're reserving your right to do it, but it doesn't have to be done in order for you to buy the home.
Right.
So when you waive an appraisal contingency, that means that you'll do an appraisal, but no matter what the appraisal comes back for, you're still going to buy the home.
Right.
So we'll discuss how that affects you.
So for example, I make an offer for $500,000. I'm putting down 10%.
Mm-hmm.
I say I'll waive my appraisal. Now what happens?
Let's do it backwards for a second. Let's say you're buying a house for $500,000. You're putting down 10%,
mm-hmm.
but we're leaving the appraisal contingency in there.
Okay, so a normal deal.
A normal deal.
Okay.
Or a normal deal.
Yeah,
a year
quote
and a half
unquote.
ago, right? So what that means is you're putting down 10%. That's a $50,000 down payment. If that house appraises for $495,000, you can take your down payment, you can walk away, and the seller can't do anything. And that's why in this market, an appraisal waiver is so important, because sellers understand. Now this seller has somewhere to go after he closes. They don't know your loan officer personally. They don't know the appraiser personally, and an appraiser does an appraisal for an opinion of value. So this guy's entire home purchase or the sale of his home rides on the opinion of somebody with a notepad that's going to value his home.
Right.
If you're telling the seller that you're willing to pay $500,000, but you're not willing to pay that unless an appraiser says that it's worth it, that is a good and well reason for that seller to consider somebody else who is willing to do that.
Of course.
So we reverse and we say that you're putting down 10%, but you're willing to waive the appraisal.
Right.
Right? So now the bank is only willing to lend money based on what the house appraises for. Right? So you could buy a house that's made out of 24 karat gold. But if it's in Massapequa, it's only worth, let's say, $700,000. So that's what the bank will lend on.
Right.
The bank will, the appraisal gets done. It appraises for $500,000. That's what the house is worth to the bank. Now, if you wanted to pay $525,000 for that house, you would have to cover the other $25,000 out of pocket.
Right. So basically, if I made an offer for $500,000, 10% down, and I waive my appraisal, and it comes in at $475,000.
Okay.
So now,
Better.
if it comes in at $475,000, technically, I would have to make up that $25,000 difference.
See, but yes, but here's
to keep the same 10%.
To keep the same 10% in the bank size.
Yes.
But what most people don't realize is that they hear that they're going to have to come up with the difference, and they think that they have to put down that 10% plus the additional $25,000.
Right.
And you don't. So on a conventional loan, your minimum down payment is always going to be 5%. On an FHA loan, it's always going to be 3.5%.
Right.
So if you're in a position where you want to put down 10% on $500,000, but the house appraises for 5% lower than what you were expecting, you can still put down that original 10%. 5% of it goes to the excess, and 5% of it goes to your loan. You're still going to take a loan out for the same amount of money. You're still going to have the same interest rate, and you're still going to have the same payment. The only thing that's going to change, potentially, is your mortgage insurance, because you're not putting down 20%.
Yeah, and I see that. I always got that. I knew it, and then when we
It's
started doing stuff,
confusing,
I got confused, and now I literally have to come to you every time to make sure I'm explaining it right, which is why we're doing this. But
Right.
So, in a nutshell, that 10% that you're putting down, to keep numbers easy, we are on that $500,000 purchase price. It comes in at $475,000. Right. So we were putting down $50,000. Now we're short technically $25,000 from what the bank says the house is worth from what we want to buy it for.
So now you're putting down $25,000 towards the $475,000, and that other $25,000 goes to the seller as an overage.
Okay, so $25K goes to the bank, $25K goes to the seller.
Right. And $25,000 is roughly 5% of $475,000. So you're still putting down 5% on the bank end.
Right.
And the loan still works.
Right.
So
now, does that mess up DTI issues or loan to LTVs or anything of that? Or that's really all on the back end as long as their income can support it like they're good?
It's going to change the LTV calculation, because the LTV is based on the sale price or the appraised value, whichever is lower.
Okay.
So if the appraisal comes in at $475,000, now you're taking out a loan for $450,000
right.
against $475,000. So that's going to be closer to 95 LTV instead of 90, which you had originally hoped for.
Right.
But the bottom line is you are still paying exactly what you planned on paying for the house. Your payment is still the same, and your interest rate is still the same. If your mortgage insurance becomes slightly more expensive, that's going to be the only difference that you see.
So realistically, your mortgage insurance would be, say, a couple dollars higher a month, whatever, but you just lose technically that 5% that you're short, give or take whatever the number is. That 5% you're going to be short of the equity that you would have had if you made the whole 10% to the house.
Yeah, but so here's the way that you have to look at it. That equity is fake right now anyway, because the prices are going up so fast. The only reason that your house didn't appraise for $500,000 is because you didn't have a comparable sale in the area to comp it to $500,000. Now, what happens when that house closes?
That becomes a comp.
For $500,000.
Right.
So now your equity is there. So people think that, I'm losing equity, Then, you should have never offered $500,000 on the house.
Because a house is worth what someone's willing to pay for it.
Right. And you paid that, and now it's a comp. And when someone lists the house next door, they're going to list it for $500,000, and it's probably going to sell for $525,000. But there's no inventory. So the problem is we're using these ancient rules, and by ancient, I'm talking a year and a half ago.
Which is crazy.
So the appraisers are not giving us time adjustments.
Right.
A time adjustment is huge. If the entire market across the country, in newspapers and on Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac's website, says that our market is up 8% in the last year, but you won't give me an extra 3% from the house next door.
Yeah.
That's so people look at it like, I'm going to be missing out on equity. That equity is whatever you say it is.
Right, because what I'm hearing from a lot of buyers that are nervous about doing that, they're like, but I'm buying at the height of the market. What happens if it starts, if it doesn't keep going up?
So go home. You don't know that you're buying at the height of the market? Have you turned the news on?
Right, everybody knows that.
Right. So
and we tell them we don't have a crystal ball. we don't know how long this is going to keep going up. We don't know when it's going to go down, but everything goes up and everything comes down. It's just real estate in general. Yeah. There's always dips, and then there's always going to be highs. So worry about when you're selling it on a high then.
There's always ups and downs, and that's the thing too, right? The seller that's selling you the house has to buy another house. And he's going to deal with the same shit that you're dealing with. He's going to have to pay $30,000 over ask. Yeah. He has a sale contingency to deal with that you don't even have to deal with. So when you're sitting around saying, "Oh well, I have 25%, but I don't want to waive an appraisal," that's the only reason why. It's the only reason that you're a stronger buyer than someone putting down 5%. Right. If you're not willing to waive an appraisal contingency, if somebody came to me to buy my house and said, "I want to put down 5%," just because I only want to put down 5%. But here's proof of funds that I have $300,000.
Right, you're just doing it because the rates are low and you want to take advantage.
And I'll waive the contingency. I'm taking that over someone that's going to pay cash but wants to do an appraisal and doesn't want to pay for the house unless it appraises.
Right.
Because what you're doing is you're saying, I'm a strong buyer. I have 25%. I'm putting down $150,000, but I'm only going to buy your house if the appraiser says that it's worth what I'm offering.
Right.
So at that point, why even make an offer? Just put in an offer that says, I'll buy the house for what it appraises for.
Now, do you think that people should be if people that waive an appraisal, do you think it's smart to just waive it in general and have that risk if they think it could be $5,000 or $10,000 short, or technically it could be $50,000 short? Or do you think they should cap it at some point where they say, I'll waive it up to $25,000, or I'll waive it for a certain number rather than the full spectrum, I guess?
See, that's like, there are conservative people and there are aggressive people.
Right.
I'm the kind of person that if I walk into a house that's in a $400,000 neighborhood, but it has a $100,000 backyard, if that's something that I would have paid $100,000 for,
right,
I'll offer $450,000, and I'll be okay with paying an extra $50,000 because I understand what that means to me and why it's there.
Right.
There's someone else that won't buy it unless it matches the appraisal. So that's always a conversation for the realtor and the buyer, right? Here are the comps. This is what the house is going to appraise for, in my opinion. This is what the house is worth, in my opinion. The line was around the block. There was people waiving tickets like the stock market 15 years ago. Someone is going to buy this house for $580,000, in my opinion.
Right.
Now, it might appraise $50,000 short or $40,000 short because it's the only friggin' house left in Baldwin on the market or whatever the case is.
Right.
So at that point, you could explain to them, A, maybe because it's their only option, or B, because it's just the right thing to do, waive the appraisal up to a certain amount. Right? So what do you see people calling that? An appraisal protection or...
I don't even think there's like a word for it.
Right.
Or not that I've seen. At least, we've been doing, we'll waive it up to $25,000 if we think it's going to be in that ballpark.
See, so, and you have to be careful because some listing agents don't even know how to convey that to the seller.
We just had that. So Steve literally just had a deal like this. He had to write up a gigantic email with pictures showing them what the numbers would be, showing, okay, this is what 5%, this is what changing all the numbers. If it came in short, he had to save the deal. He had to get him on the phone, his lender on the phone,
the seller,
the
listing agent,
and the bank to explain the entire thing because they just had no idea about anything. The buyer was okay with it.
Right.
The attorney and everybody else involved had no idea like how to explain it and what even like was going on.
Sounds like a listing agent that doesn't do a lot of listings.
Yeah, but that's the problem. If you're dealing with somebody that doesn't really know,
right? Your offer might not even be considered as strongly as it should be because it's not even going around the same way. So
he literally saved it. It took him an hour on the phone, he said, to explain it, and then he goes, "We're good. We're going to contract." But
great sense of accomplishment when that happens.
It is. If a realtor, for example, he's like, I studied on the phone. The knowledge that we've given and he's looked up on his own was the reason why this deal got done. If a realtor doesn't know how these appraisal waiver situations could work,
right,
and trying to explain it to somebody that has no idea, the deal's dead.
Right. Or you could get the realtor that just hears, oh, well, I hear if you waive an appraisal, you have a much better chance. And the buyer might not know what that means.
Right.
So let's go over the people that can't waive appraisals.
Yeah, so say they're the 3.5%, 5% down buyers. That's all the money they got. They got enough for 5% down and closing cost. That's it. So now, same scenario. They offer $500,000. They waive their appraisal.
And then it comes in at $475,000.
And then it comes in at $475,000, and that's literally their whole 5% down.
Right. So now these buyers don't have the ability to pay the additional $25,000 plus their down payment. So those buyers would be in serious trouble if they waived the appraisal contingency, because now they can't back out of the contract on the grounds of the appraisal came in short.
Right.
So now you're looking for all these bullshit excuses of why the buyer can't buy it. And
then they're running around trying to shake down all their godparents for a couple bucks to make up that $25,000.
Yep, get gifts. So, what we say for the appraisal or the getting hot.
It's hot in here, man. We got to get some AC in this joint.
So I'm doing all right. I think the easiest way to word it is that we are willing to pay up to $20,000 more than what the house appraises for. So if the house comes in short, if the appraisal comes in short, my buyers are willing to pay an additional $20,000 above the appraisal value.
Right.
And that might be all that they have.
Mm-hmm.
So if I speak with a buyer and they say, listen, I have $80,000 budgeted towards a down payment and closing costs.
Right.
Right? Closing costs are $20,000. That leaves us with $60,000. 5% down on this specific example is $25,000. So out of that $45,000, there's still $35,000 left over.
Mm-hmm.
That means that they could pay up to $35,000 above what the house appraises for.
Right.
So that's one way to think of it, or one way to word it if you're trying to beat it through somebody's head and it just doesn't work.
Shout out Juliana opening up the windows.
Feel that. Feels right.
It felt nice. Got some cross ventilation.
AC 0, Windows 1.
Yeah. Hashtag shout out to Benny. Feel free to get the AC fixed because it's hot.
So, I mean, as far as appraisals go, I think we covered a good amount.
So, in a nutshell, Spark noted everything we just went on. If someone's waiving the appraisal, if it comes in short, as long as you're putting down basically 10% or more, and
Right.
it's not, and it comes in 5% short, you could still move forward with the same 10% down and not come out of pocket any more money.
Correct.
You could still have the same mortgage payment. The only thing that's really going to change on paper is your mortgage insurance is going to go up a little bit because you have less value.
And not much, because if we're going conventional, then the reason we're going conventional is because your credit score is good in the first place. So your mortgage insurance might go up by $30 or $40 a month.
Right.
If this is an FHA loan, the mortgage insurance is not going to change.
Now, speaking of FHA, we'll hit it for 2 minutes because I've gotten multiple people saying different things. If you waive an appraisal on FHA and it comes in short, say you're willing to pay $10,000 over appraised value in the contract, can you do that FHA? Can you pay more on an FHA loan if it doesn't appraise for the number?
All right, this is a touchy one. So you can do whatever you want as an FHA buyer. However, there's an FHA amendatory clause that needs to be signed before closing on every FHA deal. It can't be signed at the table, and there's a reason for that. The FHA amendatory clause says that if a home does not appraise for the purchase price on the contract, the seller has to reduce the purchase price to the appraised value, or the buyer reserves the right to walk away from the deal.
Right.
This supersedes anything in the contract, and it has to be signed before closing.
So literally waiving an appraisal on an FHA right there kind of shuts it down almost.
It's a handshake thing, because if I were to waive something on an FHA appraisal for a purchase for myself, it would be because I want the fucking house. And if it appraised short, I would pay the difference.
Right.
But
are you allowed to?
100% you can. The buyer is still allowed to cover the difference. They're still allowed to pay the difference.
Okay.
The problem is they're also allowed to get that amendatory clause signed the day before closing and then walk away from the deal.
Okay.
Now, that amendatory clause is signed by the seller. It says the seller acknowledges the fact that this is an FHA deal, and if the house appraises for short, he's willing to, the seller has to reduce the price. Once he signs that, he can lean on the seller and say, listen, you have to reduce the purchase price to what it appraised for. And if you're not willing to do that, you sign the amendatory clause, we could leave.
But technically, so you could still, all the parties could still sign it because you have to sign it for a deal.
Have to.
And you could still pay the difference.
Pay the difference. Yep.
Because I hear a lot of attorneys will say, if it's FHA and it doesn't appraise, you can't pay that difference.
You can. You absolutely can. You can. We just had, so now the seller also doesn't have to sell his house.
Right.
He could
walk away too.
and leave too.
Right.
So we have a deal right now. It's one of Sean's. House appraised for $10,000 short. $5,000 came from the buyer. $5,000 came from the seller.
Right.
It's an FHA deal, because just the buyer wants to play hardball and say, I'm not going to cover the difference. I'm out. the seller doesn't have to reduce the price.
Right.
Now,
Because he doesn't have to sell it to you.
Right. So now good luck finding another house. And you're going to do the same thing on every FHA deal in the future. So it's not even in a buyer's best interest to try and sneak that past somebody right now.
Right.
Because if you're not willing to pay the difference, the seller's not going to be willing to reduce it. He'll find somebody that'll pay full price.
Exactly. So basically, if you want to waive your appraisal, as long as you are putting down 10% and you know that, well, it's hard to know for sure, but if your realtor showing you comps that are kind of supporting in a ballpark, maybe 5%, give or take, one way or another.
Right. If you're doing 10% down, you should probably think about waiving, the way that we spoke about it.
A partial, like almost partial.
But yeah, but once you get into the 15 or 20% range, it should be like an infomercial, like, call your loan officer today to find out how much you can waive on an appraisal. Like, seriously, that's what you should do.
Yeah.
If you want to be a strong buyer, you should literally be calling your loan officer and saying, if I'm looking in the $600,000 price range, what are my options for waiving an appraisal?
Right.
Right? And, especially on these new construction homes, like these people don't want to waive appraisals on new construction homes. They're the only new house for 4 miles. Like, someone is going to pay a drastic amount more than they should for this house. And some appraiser is going to have either a strong opinion or a short opinion. And if you're telling a seller that your willingness to buy this house is based on this guy's opinion of value of the house.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we know that there's an appraiser out there that'll appraise it for higher, and there's one that'll appraise it for lower.
Right.
It's
their opinion of what the value is.
Their opinion of value. Some appraisers do time adjustments. Some appraisers will go outside of school districts. Some appraisers will adjust differently for square footage or consider the home in different quality.
Right.
So we're in such a niche market where you really should not be leaving the fate of you living in a new home up to an appraiser. And you see these listing agents, 90% of the listings go to 10% of the agents on this island, or even less, right?
Probably.
The real agents that are pumping out 100, 150 houses, it's because they know how to spot the good offers and they know how to spot the ones that should be left on the table.
So if you're 20% down buyer, you think everybody should be waiving appraisals?
Yeah.
Yeah?
100%. Yeah. Conventionally, because mortgage insurance on 15% or 10%, right? So the LTV calculation would change, but not by much, right?
Right.
So maybe 20% goes to 15 or 20% goes to 10. So your mortgage insurance might be $60 a month or $110 a month if the house doesn't appraise for as high as you wanted it to.
Right.
But I mean, we're literally in the business of overpaying for houses right now.
Yeah.
So if you're one of those people that needs to get in for dirt cheap because you don't have a lot of money saved,
Wrong time to buy.
or wrong time to be picky,
Yeah.
just get the fucking house and then figure it out later. The mortgage insurance, the this, the that, like.
As long as you're good with the payment, that should, if you want the house, as long as you're comfortable with the payment, that should kind of be it.
It really is. Like, I've had people complain about $60 monthly mortgage insurance, but they show me 2 houses, and one of them the taxes are $8,000, and one of them the taxes are $12,000.
Well, that's the same thing. These people are buying $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 houses, and then they're asking for a $50 credit on their inspection. Like, you're buying the biggest thing in your life, and you're going to bust my chops about a $50 discount on your inspection. It's like,
right. And anything that you do discounted is I'll discount my fee, and I'll discount my service too.
Yeah.
I'll miss the basement, or you're not gonna, you don't want someone that's gonna check your entire house out to cut corners or to who wants to be the guy that everyone remembers for the person that chewed him down for $50.
Yeah. Crazy. All right, let's flip it.
Okay.
People so we got the mortgage the appraisal contingency. Mm-hmm. And now we also hear people that are waiving a mortgage contingency.
Okay.
So what is a mortgage contingency? How does it protect buyers? Because that's in every contract regularly.
Right.
So what is a mortgage contingency? And then we'll segue into what happens if you obviously remove it.
So a mortgage contingency is like an appraisal contingency on steroids, right? Let's say you waive the appraisal contingency,
Okay.
but you lose your job. The bank gives you a denial letter. We can no longer give you a mortgage because you're not qualified to purchase the home anymore.
Okay.
That mortgage contingency protects you and gets you your down payment back.
Okay.
If you waive an entire mortgage contingency, you're telling the seller, this is basically what you're telling the seller, I'm applying for a mortgage. If I don't get the mortgage, I'll buy your house in cash.
So you're saying basically you waive your mortgage contingency,
Doesn't matter.
You have to buy that house regardless. You lose your job or your money gets stolen. It doesn't matter.
You die.
You're buying the house.
So we've seen this in a contract when COVID started.
Yes.
You remember that?
Yes.
If you or your spouse dies, half the down payment is kept by the seller. Jesus Christ, half.
Yeah.
What if both of us die? You keep the whole thing.
Keep the whole thing and your house.
So it was the buyers actually didn't want that house bad enough to, when you seen that in a contract, these kids were 30 years old. They weren't going to die from COVID, but just to see that, that's just a red flag. You know what? You deal with, we'll find another house. But if it was a mortgage contingency, so we did a sale for this was when I was doing real estate. This was 2 years ago. We were selling a condo, and we were nervous that it was going to appraise. So we were asking them, there was $50,000 in upgrades. The sellers wanted top dollar for their condo. They waived the appraisal contingency and the mortgage contingency. So we called the attorney to double check because they were using, I think, Wells Fargo at the time or TD.
Yeah, bank
wasn't going to be a good.
Right.
Yeah, no, I talked to the seller. He has plenty of cash to buy the house. They just want to take out a mortgage. If the mortgage doesn't work out, they're just going to buy cash.
Oh.
The mortgage worked out. They got the mortgage. Taking out a mortgage right now makes all the sense in the world. The interest rates are so cheap, and the interest is subsidized by the government.
Well, that makes sense because we have a buyer. We have a listing
Right.
in Babylon.
Mm-hmm.
We accepted an offer, all cash. And then I got a call. This was like 2 weeks ago. I got a call yesterday. Hey, Josh, I'm calling to set up an appraisal for 10th Street. I'm like, what?
There was
so
no
I reached
mortgage
out,
contingency in the contract.
So I reached out to the agent, and I said, your offer's cash. Any reason why we're
doing an
appraisal? He goes, oh, they just want to know what the house is worth. I'm like, you sure? Because I've never seen this happen. I never had somebody pay cash and ask for an appraisal just to have their knowledge.
There's no appraisal contingency in the contract, right?
They have to buy the house regardless.
Okay.
So it doesn't,
Because so that's, believe it or not, that's possible. No mortgage contingency, but an appraisal contingency.
No, everything's waived. They have to buy the cash. If it mortgage or cash doesn't matter. They have to pay it. But they decided 2 weeks into the deal, oh, I guess the rates are cheap enough. Like, why are we going to pay cash? Let's go get the mortgage. If we can get the mortgage, we'll take the mortgage.
$200,000 or $300,000.
If we can't, we'll pay it cash because that's what we're in the contract for.
Well, I had someone. He follows me on Instagram, so if he's watching this, I don't think he'd make it this far. But he was buying like a $1.5 million house in West Islip.
Does he need a new realtor?
And he went into contract, everything, buying the house cash, but there was an appraisal contingency in the contract. He did an appraisal and it appraised for 1.2.
Little short.
And he told the seller, he's like, I don't want to pay 1.2. I don't want to pay 1.5 if the house is only worth 1.2.
Right.
So the seller said, you're supposed to be paying cash. You can't get your money back. Litigation, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, he got his money back. There was an appraisal contingency.
Even though it was cash.
It was cash, but it was an appraisal contingency.
Wow.
So he might or might not have even done that on purpose, but it worked out in his favor. Right.
Saved them.
But if he didn't have that contingency, the seller could have told him, like,
it is what it is.
Yep.
So for the people that are waiving their mortgage contingency and or waiving their appraisal and
you better have
doing
that
both,
money. Yeah.
Is there anything that could possibly save you from
losing your down payment? If you
from
can't
losing
get
your
a
down
mortgage?
payment if you can't get the mortgage? Like if you lost your job.
So you could put, you can put a contract in however you want, right? We are waiving the mortgage contingency, sans the possibility of my buyer losing his job.
But say you just waive it. Mortgage contingency, straightforward, plain. Is there any way to possibly save your down payment if you lose your job or all of a sudden you can't? I don't even know what other reasons there is. Is there any saving grace?
No, you'd have to buy it in cash. You'd have to get a hard money loan. You'd have to figure out a way to satisfy the confines of the contract of what you said you were going to do. Pay for the house without a mortgage contingency.
And that's it.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So,
that's kind of scary, waiving the mortgage contingency. If you don't work for yourself. If you work for a company.
Right.
And you don't control, if they let you go,
Well, working for yourself is even scarier right now because self-employment loans are just
I know the self-employment loans are,
if you
tougher.
Work for someone else.
But if you work for somebody and they let you go just because, we decided to downsize our office, we're letting some people go. We're giving you a severance package, sorry.
100%.
What the hell are you supposed to do? Hopefully go find another job in the next, month?
Yeah. The place that I just bought in Tampa, it went on the market for 3 days because it was the last unit that they were selling. And I put in an offer with no mortgage contingency.
At least you know you're not going to fire yourself.
In Florida, they don't do these wild down payments like they do here. So it's like $5,000 down on contract. So that was my bet.
Is Florida an attorney state?
No.
Or it's the
against
sales
it on
binder,
state.
and you just sign the binder, and like that's like the legit deal.
I was shocked. You sign it, you send it as an offer, and if they accept your offer, they sign it and send it back. Now you're in contract.
And now you're in contract, and then you do the inspection.
Then you do the inspection.
And if it doesn't work, then
Then they get your money back.
That's the weirdest thing. I don't know if it's weird.
That's the best way to do
Or
it.
if it's just weird because we do it the opposite way here.
It's weird because we do it the opposite way here. There's no reason why we should accept an offer, let somebody spend $500 on an inspection, and then 2 hours later show the house to somebody else who might try to outbid them. I think that's fucked up.
Yeah, I agree.
If you accept the offer, accept the offer.
Speaking of that, it happened to Ron today.
Today.
He had this house been on the market since October.
Oh, God, where is it?
Queens. Two family for $1 million.
Okay, it's not mine.
No.
All right.
2 family for $1 million.
Right.
Been on the market since October.
Okay.
We had an accepted offer last week, $965. He signed the contracts.
This is his listing?
No, buyer.
Buyer.
We represented the buyer.
Signed on the buy side.
Signed on the buy side. Left his down payment. Rebecca was the attorney. Overnighted the contracts. They signed them on Friday. Overnighted them. So they obviously got them first thing Monday morning. Obviously, I guess they had people showing it still over the weekend. They get an offer. Ron gets a call today. Did you sign contracts? And they say, no, we got another offer for $990. The house been on the market since October. All of a sudden, they get 2 great offers in the same weekend. Go figure.
Do you think it's bullshit?
So Ron thought it was. Goes back to them and says, I'll give you my client will come up to $980.
And they still turned it?
And they said, no good. So Ron calls them back. They go back and said, all right, we'll match it. We'll do the $990. They came back and said, no good.
We want you to beat it?
We want you to beat it because they're putting down 40% and you're only putting down 20%. So they had to come up to $999, basically full ass.
To avoid the mortgage tax, the mansion tax.
Yeah, I guess that's probably. Yeah. So that was their list price, $990. So they had to come up another $9,000 over the $990 because they're only putting down 20% and the other guy was putting down 40% to stick with his offer. So he had it at $965 and now had to come up an additional $34,000 over the weekend. And that would have been protected if it was like Florida.
Yeah. In
which
Florida,
is nuts.
yeah, once the seller signs, you're in, and you don't do an inspection until it's, and then as long as you're willing to say I'm good with everything, then they have to stick by what they agreed on.
Yeah.
So I think that is the way to do things. But here it's just attorneys and pissing matches and who
got a bigger one.
Who can cross out more shit and change more things, and like if we offer a 10-day. A 10-day period to get a commitment, and then I've done this before, have the realtor offer a 10-day thing, right?
Right.
Then the buyer's attorney goes, oh, no, we want 30 days. And then the seller goes, oh, what the hell, you told us 10.
Yep.
And then, so now, I did tell you 10, we already have a commitment, we're ready to do this right now. Now you have the seller, and it's just a pissing
match, yeah.
That's a whole
nother podcast. All right, so we'll wrap this one up, but if people made it this far, hopefully it's only 35 minutes in, give or take, so hopefully they're still here. But if they like what they're hearing and they want to learn more because they're thinking about buying a home or whatever, you're doing a first time, not even a first time, just a home buyer seminar in general.
Yes.
The 27th.
Yep.
6:30?
6 o'clock, 6:30.
So the 27th, 6 o'clock at Bar Grazi in Massapequa. So it's going to be full of all what it takes to get your offer accepted, what a mortgage is, basically the whole process of start to finish of your mortgage. So anybody that wants to register, where can they register? How do they find it?
Well, you and your team have been posting me like I'm on your team, so I appreciate that. It'll be on your Instagram, on my Instagram. It's in my link tree. It'll be everywhere. I mean,
all right. So to find you, how do they find you?
So at Sal Rizzolo, SalRizzolo, and I'm sure you'll tag me and I'll tag you in this one.
So, and if they want to call you, they want to get pre-approved, best way to contact you?
Always my cell phone.
Number?
And it's right on my Instagram. It's 631-946-0654.
All right, so I expect everybody who's looking to buy a home, come learn some knowledge. You don't have to use me as a realtor. You don't have to use Sal as a loan officer, but if we could help you in any way, come get some free knowledge, have some free food and some drinks on us, and I think that's a wrap.
Basically free food and drinks and then some boring mortgage stuff on the side.
Come get some free food and drinks.
And
Pretend you're learning something.
Talk. Yep.
And then maybe you'll use me to buy it. So if you need to sell, if you need to buy, give me a call, 516-732-6398. Again, any questions or concerns, mortgage, real estate related, hit us up.
Reach out.
That's a wrap.
Thank you for having me, Josh.
Take care. Comb your hair.